I don't know. Gotta put on my game face.
Yeah, it's pretty informal around here, that's for sure. But I'm just going to let you speak for a couple minutes about kind of the process of applying at Ivy Tech and what steps they might take and any other information you want to share with our youth.
Absolutely. So in terms of applying to Ivy Tech, you have a number of options right now. The first one, like we've been talking about, is if you are still in school but want to earn some credits while you're in school, you're open to apply as a dual credit or dual enrollment student, which means that you can either take your dual credit classes at school or currently with us via Zoom or online, you can do what's called a dual enrollment class, which is where if you have space in your schedule or you just want to, you're welcome to come and take college courses with us. Now, if you want to come to study with us after graduation, you also have a few options. One option is if you're really looking to get more into a career soon. We have a number of programs that are certificate programs, technical certificate programs, associates programs that lead to those sort of quick jobs. Especially right now, we have the next level jobs program. And those are a few certain sectors of careers that the state of Indiana does not have enough workers to fill. And so those programs are all covered. The tuition is covered by the state of Indiana. We're happy to work with you on that. You can just reach out to me. I am the Owen Valley admissions rep about anything next level jobs related, and I can walk you through that. You can also come as a normal student, not through that program using FAFSA, to do any sort of certificate associates you'd like. Our admissions process isn't selective. So how it works instead is if you apply, you're admitted. What happens then is that we figure out where you need to go while you're here. So my job is less about getting you to apply and more about helping you to figure things out after you've applied. Typically at a four-year school, you need to know what you're doing, sort of where you want to be, and the application is a much longer process because it's more selective. Ours is not quite that way. The final thing that I think is really helpful for students, especially right now, is our ASAP program. So that's an accelerated associate's. How that works is you can earn an associate's degree, which typically takes 2 years, in 11 months. It's a selective program, so you need to have a 2.6 GPA. You need to have somebody who will write you a letter of recommendation. But it's a great way to get a jump start on your education, especially because this coming year, we're doing both in-person, virtual, and fully online. So you have choices there. You do it as a cohort, so with the same group of students the whole time you're there, so you get more of that college experience. But the other nice thing is you can shave a full year off of your four-year degree. Many of them are these specific transfer programs where you can go directly to somewhere like Purdue, ISU, or IU, and things like psychology, education, and things like that, such that when you get there, you immediately are a junior in that program. So again, that's a great program. It's sort of we have things that run the gamut for whether or not you want to go to work in the next year, or if you want to get a four-year degree quickly, go to graduate school, whatever else you want to do. We're happy to help you sort of at any piece of that, whether we're your final destination or whether we're a step towards getting you to your next stop.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Well, I know, Marjorie, are you in a dual credit right now with Ivy Tech?
Not this year.
Not this, you did last year though, right?
Yes, I had my pre-cal and my animal science, but
okay.
I thought that was odd that animal science was.
Okay.
It was so.
Okay. So with those classes, so does that generate an actual Ivy Tech transcript then for them that they
That's correct. Anything that is dual credit or dual enrollment, you get an Ivy Tech transcript that you would then, if you're applying elsewhere, it needs to go with your high school transcript. And typically you can transfer it in as college credit.
Gotcha.
And again, the biggie people are often worried about, will it transfer? Anything gen ed here will transfer to any four-year university in the state of Indiana. Now, things that aren't obviously don't. Like if you take welding and then you want to go to Purdue for biology, well, those welding classes aren't going to transfer. But in terms of gen eds and things like that, they do, and we're always happy to help you map that out.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Janaya, do you want to kind of share some of your process for Purdue?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Purdue, we have a couple of different things to consider. And Christine, I apologize, I didn't hear. Are you a senior or a junior?
I'm a senior.
Okay, so right now you all have a few choices in front of you. If you're thinking about coming to Purdue, November 1st, so 3 days from now, that is our early action deadline. Early action means if you apply by that date, you have a stronger chance of being admitted. You get considered for all of our merit-based scholarships, and you are considered for the Honors College if you request to be a part of that. Also, I don't think anyone wants to do these programs, but just in case, computer science, nursing, animal nursing, and professional flight, you got to hit that November 1st deadline to be considered for those programs. After you've applied and either sent us your grades and test scores through your counselor or through the college board, or you've not sent us test scores because we're test flexible this year, after you've done those things, you can just sit back and relax. Enjoy the holidays, enjoy the new year. The first decisions don't go out until January 15th. So you can just kind of relax and wait for that date to happen. On that date, we will release admission decision and scholarship decisions. So practically, you'll start to see things moving from that point forward. You'll start to see if we can do visit days, we'll start scheduling some of those visit days around that time. If we can't do anything bigger than a small tour, you'll be invited to that. We'll probably change a lot of the virtual things we're doing now for prospective students to admitted students. You'll get information about your specific college, about scholarships and financial aid, and you'll have until May 1st of your senior year to make your final enrollment decision. We hope you choose to come to Purdue, but we also know you got a lot of choices and there's a lot of uncertainty right now with the pandemic and your goals. We have nearly 200 majors. So there's a lot of choices out there for you to choose from. And when you apply, you actually get to pick two majors on the application, a primary and a secondary. If we can admit you for the primary, we will. If we cannot, we will immediately look at you for your second choice major with the hope of getting you into that program. Now, after you've been admitted, you accept your offer, and you find yourself the summer before you come here, we have an orientation program called STAR, where you're going to come to campus, hopefully, fingers crossed. You'll meet your academic advisor. You'll learn a lot about the student support services that we have here, and then you'll prepare to join us in the fall with your class schedule, with your roommates. If you have a roommate, if you have a single, that would be great, but likely you'll have roommates. And next year's classes will really depend on how COVID works. Right now, we have some students who are doing all online, some who are living on campus and taking some classes online and some in person, and some students who are doing fully in person with a lot of social distancing and what we call de-densifying. So big classrooms with a small amount of people in them. So we're doing everything we can to be as safe as possible during the pandemic, and we'll continue that as long as we need to for our students, faculty, and staff. The big question you got to ask yourself though is if we're in like the top 500 schools you may want to go to, can you get an application in by November 1st? Because honestly, that will help you so much with this whole process. We do the common application only, so I would highly encourage doing the common app.
And we're going to talk about that tonight. That's in my presentation for the second part, if these girls want to stick around for that. But that was one of my questions, is if that's the only option. Now, Ivy Tech, you still have like your own application that's available online, right?
That's correct. Our application's online. It's free. It takes about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Again, because we don't do selective admission, it's really more of your basic info.
Sure. Janaya, so I had one, I made a note for myself here. So on your test optional for this year, is that going to stick around, or is that just for the COVID times, or do we know yet?
Right now, it's mainly just for the COVID time. I haven't heard that we're going to do that, and if I were a betting man, I think we were going to go back. But honestly, I don't know. It's a decision that'll be made by the Faculty Senate when they are back in session later on in the spring. I think a lot's going to depend on what happens this year. We can consider everything that we think we know about this, but really we don't know all the details. So we're just going to kind of figure it out as it comes along.
Okay. So with that, so if kids apply with no scores, how does that look for them? I guess what I'm saying is, okay, so yes, you're going to allow that, but is it still like not really a great thing to do, or what is kind of the thinking behind that from the admissions office? Are you guys going to weight other things more heavily, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, we're going to look at everything. I mean, the test scores have always been a part of the decision. It's very rarely a deciding factor on its own merit. Usually it's a combination of grades, test scores, essays, the rigor of courses, the courses that relate directly into the major the student is going into. All that stuff is kind of compounded on one another to help us make a decision. For Marjorie, if she's thinking about going into theater, if I'm looking at her application, I would look at the grades that she's received in all of her courses. I probably would take a much closer look at her English, because she'll be doing a good amount of writing in our theater program. I know that the highest math that she'll likely have to take is quantitative reasoning. So I probably wouldn't require her to have, I wouldn't look at her the same way I'm looking at a computer science student or a professional flight student who's taking calculus in their freshman year. Probably will look stronger at her social sciences than her lab sciences. And I would also look at her in her environment, like what if her school offered AP and IB or dual credit, like more challenging classes, and she took some of those, that's definitely a high mark when we're considering a student. We would look at their reason for wanting to go to Purdue University. We would look at their essay, not necessarily to make sure they're like this incredible writer in the essay, but just to kind of hear their story and see if through that we can find out if Purdue is the right school for them. If someone wrote an essay about their long-standing desire to go to an urban university in a densely populated, metropolis, I would say no.
Right.
You don't know what Purdue West Lafayette is. So all those things together help us to make our decision. So test scores, historically they've had merit, and I think that's why we've stuck with them, but they've never been the end all be all.
Okay, excellent. The essay is something I have on the agenda for tonight for the kids afterwards here. So you touched on that a little bit. I of course have some things I standardly tell kids, but what now, in the today, what are you looking for in that essay? Are you looking for more of a personal bend, talking more about kind of how they've faced certain things, or what kind of things are you looking for there?
I mean, for me, and I know there's a small part, Jacob, I think in the application where they can write an essay for Ivy Tech as well. Is that a part of the application?
There used to be, it got removed.
No longer. Okay. I remember I was there 2011 through 2013, so I remember back in the day we had that. So yeah, I think the biggest thing to think about when you're writing your essay is know that real people are going to read them. Too often we get, and I know I totally get it. So much communication is quick, quick pieces of information that can be easily digested. There's nothing wrong with that, but on the college essay, that's just not the appropriate place for it. So real people are going to read these, and we really want to know who you are. That's why we have the essay there. If we don't have the essay, then all we have are a bunch of numbers and in grades. So your essay, I've admitted students based on their essay. Like they were right there on the fence, and then I read the essay, and it was like, yep, they need to be here. And I've also unfortunately denied students based on their essay because it was clear in the writing of their essay and reading it that they didn't really care. Like this was just another school they were applying to. A lot of times it was just a copied book report they did in English class, and they just submitted that with the common application. They may have the wrong college or university in it because they were just like, copy and pasting and not really paying attention. So I would just encourage you all that a real person is going to read it. It really is helpful for us. This is a chance for you to tell us about your goals, your dreams, and your hopes. It's not about anyone else. You don't have to tell us about your grandma who went to Purdue. You don't have to tell us about like the fact that you went to a football game when you were 3 and it was the best experience of your life. Like, no, this is you, your goals, and how you plan to change the future. If that's what you're writing about, you're in a good place.
Excellent. Well, that helps. I think that's something, that the kids need to hear, because that essay piece is really intimidating to some of them. I've talked to several kids that just dread that essay piece, and I've tried to calm their fears a little bit by, so that's going to help me. I can take what you had to say there and say, listen, this is this is what a real person in current admissions is talking about. And this is, just be you and share your story. Okay. Well, do you guys have anything else that you want to ask anyone? Marjorie, Christy, anybody? Okay.
No, I just think that hearing about the essay was really helpful. That was good because I've been writing mine, and that's good to. I feel like that helped. That's gonna help me adjust it, and when I go over to peer edit the whole thing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and we really do enjoy it. Like I promise you, there's no one in our office who's going to be like, well, they said their THEIR and it should have been THERE, and we're going to deny them now. Like none of us are like that. It's just a chance for us to really get to know like who you are, and it's kind of fun. I've read some that have been remarkably inspirational. Like I'm thinking like this is incredible, and I wish I could meet that student and tell them like this is why I admitted you, because your essay kind of like spoke to what we want Purdue students to be when they arrive here. So it's fun to read what's going through you all's mind right now.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Did you have anything, Christy, you want to ask? Okay. All right. Well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and kind of finish with the PowerPoint stuff I had for the girls here. So if you want to stick around, that's fine. But you are done with the portion I had planned for you all. And again, I really appreciate you being with us. And I will. I'm recording it, so I know there are some other youth that are going to want to take a look. So you will have a little more reach as well. So thank you for coming tonight.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
Thank you
All
for
right.
having us. This is awesome. You got
All
Take
right.
care.
All right. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good night. Take care of that sugar glider.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to leave the meeting on. Marjorie, are you going to stick around? I'm going to quickly go through a PowerPoint.
Do you want to just tell me at home?
Well, if you have a minute, I don't think it's going to take too long. Okay.
Okay. Well, then go ahead.
Okay. So I need to screen share. And it'll be here. Okay. Now I need, why am I not? Oh, here we go. Okay. So, and Christy's here in person, so it'll show up here for you. So I apologize because I had to do this last night too. I felt like I was talking more to the Zoom people than I was to the people that were in the room. So I want to try to make sure I do both. So we're going to just kind of go through this real quick. We're not going to make you do the mindful breathing, although I think it's wonderful. So kind of take a look at that. One of the things that I'm trying to do this year is make mindfulness a piece of every program I do. So I'm going to try to put a mindfulness minute in at the beginning, but since we kind of already are halfway through, we're good. Yeah. Yes. So I did have a Slido code here too. So if you guys want to participate in the Slido, there's the code 24372. I'm going to write it down in case you guys need it later and forget. I don't have to come back. Okay. All right. Okay, so we already talked to Jacob and Janiyah. So I really appreciated the two of them. What were your impressions and what were your thoughts on what they had to say?
I thought what they said was very helpful.
Good.
I think it gave me a better idea of what they're looking for.
Can you hear what Marjorie's saying?
Compared to what I thought they were looking for. Does that make sense? Because I don't know. I guess it's just because I've never asked exactly about the application itself. Just more of, do I have to have academic honors? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? You know what I mean, Mom?
Yep.
Mrs. April, whatever I'm supposed to call you.
Oh, no, that's good. That's good. All right. Christy, did you have any thoughts?
I did like the essay part because I'm currently writing mine for I use right now, and I don't even know where to start or like what to do.
And their early deadline is November 1st as well, right? Yeah. So Christy's writing her essay right now as well, getting ready for that November 1st deadline. So we're coming up on that. And Marjorie, you've got a couple of November 1st deadlines too, possibly.
Yes, I know, which is why tonight or tomorrow I'm gonna try to finish it up.
Okay. So we had some things we talked about in the previous session, action items from the previous session. So this, I just took the screen from the last screen from last session and pulled it in here and added, did you have a chance to do this stuff, right? So did you guys have a chance to do any of this or even make an effort? Because I know you all are busy. I know how busy Margie is, and I know you're busy. So were you guys able to play around any in Indiana Career Explorer?
I have done it before. I know I have, like in 8th grade and freshman year. And it was all the same thing that I thought
Yeah.
it would be. But
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about it is it gives you, you can kind of take a look in a lot of different areas and see some things. And you know, it might come up with some things that you hadn't thought about before, as far as things you might be interested in, things, schools that you might be interested in that may have not popped up on your radar yet. So what if, are you guys, no, that's okay. I'm not going to do the Slido here. And then, so a brag sheet, and I gave you guys hard copies of the brag sheets last time. So I don't know if you had a chance to work on those, but I really, really encourage you to do that. And that just means basically a list of kind of the things that you've accomplished. And you can keep that just in a Word document on your computer, or if you want to keep it written, that's fine, but it will help you as you're filling out the applications and even as you're doing the essays and stuff. And it will be very helpful coming up when you start doing the scholarship applications as well, because you don't have to remember every time you fill out an application, you know, 17 things, that it's just right there, because you'll forget things. And you'll wish that you had put them on there. And then the most important thing for tonight is, do you guys, I know Marjorie has a Common Application account. Are you working through Common App?
yeah, I've started mine. I haven't finished filling out my profile, but I have an account.
Okay. So definitely, especially, I assume you're going through Common App to submit your IU app.
I'm actually doing IU's on their
Okay.
website. So I already started that. All I have left is the essay.
All right. So if you're doing that, keep a copy of that somewhere. I think that you can do that. I think you can keep a copy of what you submit somewhere, because a lot of that information is going to be very similar to what you'll just pump in here.
Yeah.
And that'll make it a whole lot easier for you. Okay. So definitely, if you haven't yet, get yourself a Common App account. So it's just commonapp.org. And we're going to talk a little more about that here in a minute. So applications. So to give a little more just of the nuts and bolts, I know Janiyah and Jacob talked a little bit about their specific applications, but in general, what you're going to be paying most attention to, first and foremost, deadlines. So you guys are both aware that you've got a deadline coming up for that early admission decision. And one thing to look at, because a lot of kids, especially kids that have never, don't have any siblings that are in college, their parents maybe didn't go to college, but not a lot of resources on how it all works. There's a lot of different types of deadlines, right? So there's early action, there's early decision, there's a regular deadline, there's rolling admission. You're going to want to look and try to see what each of those mean. So typically, and they might use different terminology depending on the school, but typically an early action just means if you apply by a certain time, you're going to be able to get a decision earlier. You're going to maybe be in the mix for more scholarships. I know Janaya shared at Purdue, their early action deadline gets you in there for consideration for some merit scholarships that you might not have access to if you apply later. So there are some perks to meeting that early action deadline. That's a lot different than early decision. So anybody that sees the term early decision, really read what that means for the individual school, because typically early decision is a binding decision, which means, for instance, and Marjorie, there's an early decision option at Hanover, for instance. So you apply by the certain date, you actually sign a contract that says, if I'm admitted to this school, I will attend, and then you cancel your applications to every other school. So there may be perks to that. So if you are absolutely 100% sure that you want to go to a school, there is nothing wrong with doing that early decision. However, if you're undecided, if you have it down to 3, 4, 5 schools, but you're just not sure which one of those 3, 4, or 5, do not do early decision, because you don't want to tie yourself into something when you just aren't sure yet. And typically those deadlines are fairly early, like November 1 or December 1. Regular admission is going to usually be somewhere in the spring, so winter or spring, so somewhere in January, February, March, something like that. In fact, what did Janaya say for Purdue? He gave me a date. They start releasing decisions January 15th, and then they will roll. Okay, so that's what rolling admission means. Rolling admission basically means after they take care of all their early deciders, their regular deciders that have met that January 1 or January 15 deadline, after that, as they get applications, they make those decisions. So for instance, a school that has a rolling admission date of, say, January 15, and you apply February 15, then they're going to get that application. They're going to consider it as soon as possible, because you're probably not the only one, right, that submitted that application. And then you'll probably fairly soon have a decision whether or not you're admitted to that school. Okay, there are going to be deadlines for different programs, and Janaya touched on that as far as Purdue is concerned. For instance, the flight program, the nursing program, the computer science program at Purdue, you've got to get applied to those programs by November 1. Right? So there may be some specific programs. Typically, they are programs that are highly competitive, and definitely at Purdue, those are highly competitive programs. So if you are interested in a program like that, make sure you know the deadline, because it may be different than their regular deadline. And then know the deadline for scholarship consideration. So for instance, he mentioned that you can wait until May to make that final decision on whether or not you're going to go. But if you want to be considered for scholarships, you might have to have made that decision earlier. So know the deadlines for any scholarships. And we're going to talk in our next session. So December 2nd, I think, is the next one I have scheduled. Is that right? I think December 2nd is our next one. That one is going to be specifically, how do I pay for this, right? So we're going to be talking about scholarships. We're going to be talking about the FAFSA, financial aid, that sort of thing. But just so you know right now, make sure you know if your school has deadlines for specific departmental scholarships, school-wide scholarships, whatever it might be. Make sure you know what those deadlines are so you meet them. And then finally, and I will tell you a personal story. I was a first generation college student. My parents didn't go to college, so I didn't know. When I applied to IU, I was in, right? I didn't know any different. I had no idea there was a housing deadline, that I had to apply specifically for housing. So it gets to be like a couple weeks before my freshman year at IU, I don't have a place to live. So it was a little bit of a scare, especially for a incoming freshmen. So make sure you know when your housing deadline is, and make sure you get the housing application. It will probably be a separate application that they will make sure you get after you're accepted. Okay, so when you get the acceptance from schools, start looking for things like the scholarship applications and the housing applications. Okay, any questions on deadlines? Okay. Other things you need to know when you're looking at the applications are fees. Is there a fee to apply? A lot of schools have application fees. A lot of them now are going to no fees, which I find interesting because back in the day, everybody had a fee. But I look now and it's about half and half. There's a lot of schools that there's no fee. But there are several that still have fees. And if there are fees, do you qualify for a fee waiver? Because some students will qualify for a fee waiver. If you think that you might be eligible, and it's based on income, that you might be eligible for a fee waiver, you need to check with your school counselor for a form to do that. Because they're not going to just give you one. You have to go through your school counselor to get that fee waiver. Okay, then Janiyah talked a lot about the standardized test scores. I asked him this question specifically because this is a big deal right now with the impact of COVID. Most schools have gone, at least for this year, test score optional. So you need to find out what that means for your school. Okay, if you've already taken the SAT or the ACT and you're happy with your scores, you think those scores really show who you really are academically, absolutely include those. If you're unsure or you just don't want to, or you haven't taken it yet, then check and see if your school is test score optional. Read the policy for that, because there should be a policy on how they're handling that. If you don't see that, if you can't find that, contact an admissions counselor and ask. Even if the scores are not required for an admission decision, they might be and probably are required for certain programs or scholarships, okay? If you're intending to apply for any school-based scholarships on whatever campus you're going to, they're probably going to want to see those scores. That doesn't mean you have to have them with, sorry, I went ahead. You don't have to have them with the admission application, but they will definitely ask for those later if you're applying for any of the scholarships. All right, any questions before I leave this screen? Yes.
Okay, so I have taken both the SAT and ACT.
Okay.
But if I'm going to take it again, I didn't like my school the first time, and I do leave it out, even if I'm like I'm wanting to get scholarships from the schools that I applied to, and I leave it out.
Is there a place on the application to indicate you're retaking it?
I didn't see one.
Okay, maybe contact them and ask, because different schools do it different ways. So if
I could put it on there and just say I'm going to take it again.
Yeah, because that's what I would suggest.
And we don't have to put it on there if we don't
If
want to.
right now, I think IU is test optional. Yeah, it's test optional. So definitely though, in the programs you're going to want to go into, Christy, I know you're going to probably want to have those attached. So are you taking it in November?
I'm taking it in December.
In December, okay. So what I would do if I were you is I would give admissions a call and kind of give them your situation and see what they say. I'm tempted to tell you to go ahead and include the scores you have, but I don't want that to be the wrong thing to tell you. So I would call them and ask them. That's a very good question. Okay, so moving on. So recommendations. So in the Common App, and this is a screen from the Common App. The school counselor, the Common App automatically gives you the opportunity to request that. And then I don't know, what about Christy on the IU application? Did it automatically give you an opportunity to request, or did you have to go in person and request that your counselor send it out? You don't know yet. You haven't applied yet. I mean, you haven't sent it in yet.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
But are you talking about for transcripts?
Yeah. because they usually they have to do like a school report, a transcript, and sometimes they ask them to actually write a recommendation too.
Okay. Well, I was told last that I knew of that you could just use the parchment.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
kind of
Yes.
thing,
Yeah.
And then just that
It sends a request through parchment.
Oh, it sends a request.
Yeah, it'll send a request through parchment.
Okay.
So I believe that your counselor still has to release that.
Okay. And do they have to do that by November 1st?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think as long as they see that. So what I would go ask Mrs. Richmond.
Okay.
Because I know when I talked to Mrs. Richmond the other day, she had received Marjorie's request to send all that stuff through the Common App. So she was going to pull that together and send it.
People have had issues before because they're getting a lot of requests in and they don't see them all the time.
Yeah. So typically the application deadline is, they're not going to hold your recommenders to that, but you're going to want to get them in pretty quickly. Yeah. Now that might be different for scholarships, like because scholarships are, especially the private scholarships, they're going to want it all probably as one package.
Yeah.
Right. But just to be certain, I would contact the school. In the Common App, it's going to tell you. It's going to explain that process. So in the Common App, it tells you, that you've already requested it, and you go ahead and send your application in when you're ready, and then your recommenders will get their things in. So it kind of explains that. So I would definitely touch base and make sure that that's how it works on the other ones too. So you can see here too, there are places in the Common App to include teacher recommendations and recommendations from others. Depending on the school, they may or may not be required. So for instance, I know on the schools that we've pulled up there for Marjorie, none of those are required, but it's never a bad idea, right? If you have one or two teachers that you think really know you well, know you academically and personally, and can give you a nice supportive recommendation, I would ask them to do that. The same in the others for the personal recommendations. If you have a pastor, if you have somebody in the community that really knows you well and can give you a nice, solid recommendation, do that. You never want to ask anybody who's questionable. You aren't sure what they're going to say, right? You need to ask people that you are confident are going to give you a nice, positive recommendation. So my biggest tip for you is when you are asking for recommendations that you ask in person. So even here in this situation where you're sending these, you want to go and you want to say, hey, I sent the parchment recommendation for to send in, sorry, I just had a recommendation, and you may or may not have received that already, but I wanted to come and ask you in person and make sure that that's okay. 100% of the time, if it's somebody you're pretty sure of, they're going to say, absolutely, that's fine. It's just common courtesy. It's good. Keep them in that, keep the goodwill there with them. Give them plenty of time. So if there is a deadline, make sure it's not the day before. When I was working as a school counselor, I hated nothing more than the kid who walked into my office with a crumpled up application for a scholarship and say, oh, I need a recommendation for this. Okay, when's it due? Well, it's due by 4 o'clock. Okay, no, I have like 85 other things to do. Your counselors are very busy. People in the community are very busy. Give them plenty of time. Follow up and thank them, right? So after you have everything in, after you have verification that their recommendations got in, make sure you somehow follow up and thank them. That could be just walking in their office and saying, hey, I want to thank you for sending in that recommendation. Or you can jot them a little thank you note, either way. Okay, questions on the recommendations? Okay, these become even more important when you're talking about scholarships. So when you start competing for other people's money, right, you really are going to want some strong recommendations there. Okay, so here's one that we just talked about with our guests earlier, and that's the essay or the writing supplement. So not all schools are going to require it, but if you're doing the Common App, you need to put in an essay sample. I think they just call it an essay, not a writing supplement. And if you look here, let me move stuff around on my screen. Oh shoot, I can't see it because I have my darn it. I was going to draw on here and stuff, but it's in a different place. I'm not going to mess with it. I was reading through some suggestions on the essay. And basically what one person who is an admissions counselor said is, don't pay any attention to the writing prompts that they give you in Common App. You want to go with that last option, which is share an essay on any topic of your choice. His opinion was they want to really know about you. They don't want to box you into something. They want to know what you're going to come up with as far as that essay. These prompts are there. If you just can't, or you're not confident in your ability to think of something that's going to wow somebody, they have different prompts here that you can go with. But primarily, there are some tips for writing a good essay. So you heard Janiyah talk a little bit about some of what he had, he looked for, and that was pretty much, he wants to know who you are. I mean, I think that was kind of his bottom line. He wanted to know who you are. So what you choose to write about and how you write about it is going to say a lot about who you are. So he talked about how he had admitted or denied students based on their essay. And I think what he meant by that, and in fact, he talked about that with the one he was citing that he admitted based on essay, is that it came down to all the other information kind of was like, well, it could go either way. It could go yes or no. And so the personal essay was the thing that tipped the scale, right? Here are just some tips that I took from a site that called College Essay Guy. And I went through and picked out the ones that I kind of agree with, right? There were some I didn't really agree with. I didn't put them up here. But you can look it up yourself there on that College Essay Guy. He's a blog, and he writes about college essays and some different tips. It's kind of interesting. But I really liked the read it aloud tip. When you read stuff aloud, you can kind of hear what it sounds like to someone else, right? They want to learn about growth. Okay, so a topic, a situation, something that helped you grow as a person. Be specific. Don't just have it all over the board. You need to kind of narrow it down. You have a limited amount of time, and so they're looking for something that you can get to the point and let them know who you are in a kind of a specific amount of time there. Tell a good story, right? It's someone's reading this. Janiyah alluded to this as well. Real people are reading these, and remember that. Real people, when they read something, think about what you feel like when you read something. You prefer something that's a good story. Don't just write about your statistics. So don't just write about your GPA. Don't just write about my favorite subject is English, right? You want to tell a good story. So keep the story focused. It kind of goes along with being specific. A discrete moment in time. You don't want to go from, well, my life started when I was born, and you don't want to do that. You want to kind of keep it concise. This one I've alluded to in a lot of different ways over both sessions so far. Start preparing now, right? Keep ideas together. You never know when a good idea is going to hit you. So make sure you have a way to record that, whether that be in your phone. You can leave it as a voice message to yourself on your phone. You can, type it in, something for yourself, your clipboard on your phone. Jot it down in a journal, whatever you need to do, because you won't remember it later. And good ideas are going to hit you at the most inconvenient times. Right? So try to keep track of those, because you'll wish that, oh, what was that I thought of? And it may have been the best essay start that you have ever had, right? I already talked about this one. Imagine the person reading your essay, how they will feel. Get personal, right? This is to talk about you and to really show. Now, not personal. They don't want to know about your bathroom habits. But, but you want to kind of let them in on who you are. And unless they specifically ask for it, so unless you're writing on a prompt that is required and it specifically asks for something that's very academic, stay away from academics, right? Keep it simple, right? There's no need to use flowery language. There's no need to get out the thesaurus and look for 15 different ways to say the same thing. Write like you're speaking, right? Like it's you. You want to keep it simple. I really liked this one, honor your inspiration. So if you're writing about something and you were inspired by something specific, really, really play that up. That really does speak to who you are. If there is something, and it can be a mundane something, it can be something that other people may go, huh? But if that's what inspires you, if that is what really gets you going, write about that because that will show your passion. Revise often and early. I tell this to everyone who's writing anything, right? Revise it. The first thing you put on paper is not going to be what you end up with, and it doesn't mean it's bad. And it may even mean when it comes time to do scholarship essays, for instance, and you're going to do them over a course of time, you might have different essays for every single different scholarship that you submit because it might just change a little bit every time. And that's okay. And this one kind of goes along with honor your inspiration, but write about things you care about. That's going to show who you are. It's going to show your passion. When you're writing, think about when you're in class and you have to write an essay on something that you are not particularly interested in. How interesting is your essay? It's not super interesting. So write about things you care about. Questions on the essay?
So if we are,
No.
I don't know if she's talking.
No, she just said no.
Oh.
Thank you, Marjorie.
If we're talking about,
I'm helping participate the best I can.
where would you suggest we include it if we, or should we include that?
So you want to talk about what your future plans are, what you hope to do?
Going to be doing
Mm-hmm.
after.
So I would say read the prompt for the essay. Try to figure out what it is that they want. If they're wanting that personal essay, if those future plans really can talk about the passion of who you are as a person, write about that.
IU one, it does say to talk about
Okay.
plans,
Yeah.
academic goals and all that.
Absolutely
And
then.
a different kind of realm, I guess. So
Mm-hmm.
do you
So
think I should tie in?
yes, so that's what I was talking about there. So unless it's specifically asked, so it specifically asks, does it have another? Is that one of more than?
There's a few. It's 200 to 400 words, and
Okay.
it's about future plans, your goals, and it also talks about like the last little bit is a challenge that you overcame. So
Okay.
I assume that that's like the personal part.
Yeah. So Christy is sharing that so the IU application, it talks about your future plans and your goals. And I'm suggesting that you definitely answer what the prompt is asking and try to bend it so that it really shows who you are. So why are these goals important to you? What is it about you that this is important? Why have you set this goal for you as opposed to somebody else might have a similar goal for a different reason? So I would kind of do that because that's like Janiyah said, that's going to set you apart. They want to hear about you, right? And then if there are other essay prompts, then maybe you can go into that a little more deeply if you choose to.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Okey doke. Okay, so I want to thank you guys for hanging in there with us. Here's the QR code for the survey. If you want to do it now, that'd be preferable just to get it done. Otherwise, there's the link. I'm going to send this out to some other folks who were wanting to be here but could not. And I may make this accessible to some other people too. So I'll make sure you get a link for the survey, but if you would fill that out, I would appreciate it. And I am done. So I thank you girls for coming, and thank you if you are watching this in the recorded version. Thank you for doing that. We will meet again here, same time, same place, December 2nd is what we said. And that one will focus on how do you pay for this whole business. So we've talked about, in the first one, we've talked about how you choose a college by your interests and matching that up with a school. Tonight, we talked about the admissions process. And next, we're going to talk about how you pay for it all. So we'll address scholarships and financial aid FAFSA information. So thanks, guys. Any last questions before we end? Okay.
What's for dinner?
Haha, you're funny. I'll see you at
serious,
home.
I'm hungry.
I'll see you at home, child.
I'm not kidding.
All right. All right, I'm going to end.
Okay.
Thanks,
bye,
everybody.
Mom.
Bye-bye.
Christy.
She says bye.